Hi, this is Marshall Slayton at Bankruptcy University, and I'm here today with two people who are going to help us figure out how, after filing bankruptcy, you can get a mortgage and buy a house. The first one is Vince Tobacco. He's a Virginia licensed realtor with eXp Realty and Castle Rock Real Estate Group. And then we've also got Alan Tardif, who's a licensed mortgage broker with Movement Mortgage LLC. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me today.
Great to be here.
Glad to be here.
Well, I appreciate you being here. This is a topic that comes up with a lot of my clients because everybody's goal at some point in life is to buy a house. And everybody or a lot of people think that, gosh, if I file bankruptcy, I'm never going to be able to get a house. So I really appreciate you guys being here and helping us sort of dig in to figure out how we can solve this issue for my clients and anybody who's filed bankruptcy, frankly. So let's start with you, Vince. How did you get into this business of helping people who've struggled financially find a mortgage and get a home?
Well, the easy answer is that it just sort of came along the pike one day. Helping people is what I do for a living, and someone mentioned that all of a sudden, oh, by the way, I've had a bankruptcy while we're looking at houses. They didn't tell me that before we went out to look at houses. So, you know,
of course they didn't. Of course they didn't.
When you start talking about those, do you have a lender type questions while you're walking through the house? They said, well, no, we haven't since we had our bankruptcy. So just in helping people find houses, that's how I started learning about the differences, how to do this.
Oh, great, great. And how about you, Alan? How did you get involved in the mortgage business, specifically helping people who had difficult times financially in the past?
Well, like Vince, I kind of fell into it when I first got in this business back in the early 90s. One of the first things that we do is pull credit on people, and we've got to, as mortgage bankers and brokers, be able to help people through all different scenarios. And like I said, the first thing we do is look at the credit report, we look at the score, and we analyze it. You've got to be well versed in this business to be able to help everybody with the 800 credit scores to the low 600s and people with bankruptcies and other things. So just over time, had to get used to being able to help all types of people.
Great. So I got a question for you guys. You guys can, Alan, why don't you answer this first, and then the same question for you, Vince. What is your number one big mistake that people make when they get turned down for a loan? What is the number one mistake that you see people make who are in financial difficulty when they get turned down for a loan?
Well, I would say thinking that there's no way to do it ever. They get turned down, they think never. So, I try not to say the word never. There's always a way to make something work. In regards to bankruptcies, there is length of recovery. And it's, 1, 2, 3, or 4 years, depending on the type of mortgage. So that's the biggest mistake. But I learned early on in my career, don't let people make that mistake. It's my job to let them know and educate and impart them, hey, it's okay. We've got this, and this is how we're going to deal with it.
Right. Having a plan, not just giving up, throwing up, and saying, oh, it'll never happen.
Right.
How about you, Vince? What's the number one big mistake that you see for people?
I see that people really don't know what to expect when it comes to gathering all their paperwork to get the application of the mortgage actually processed. And that happens with people who haven't had bankruptcy. So it's not just with the people who've had, a bankruptcy.
Yeah, it's certainly not click a button and get a mortgage, right? There's work involved in it, and there's paperwork. But the benefit at the end is huge, right? You get home, you start building equity as opposed to paying rent and stuff like that. So great. Now, as I said at the beginning, I've had a lot of clients, and a lot of them are afraid that they won't get approved for bankruptcy. It sounds like you guys have seen that as well in your situations. Is that right?
Definitely. I would say for me, it's one in every maybe 25 to 35 applications I've got to do with some type of bankruptcy, a Chapter 7 or a 13. And it's my job to help those people, and we do.
And they feel like, there's no chance, why even bother, don't they? I mean, a lot of times. That's what I see.
Yeah. The real issue is helping the people that don't get to us, and we've got to, because they just don't think there's a way.
Right.
So Vince and I are really good at letting people know from the get-go that there's ways around everything. All about time.
As long as you got the right person helping you out, right? As long as you got somebody who's willing to take the time and the energy basically to help you through the process, as opposed to somebody who's just looking for the cookie cutter, same every day.
The easy deal and the easy return. Everybody deserves a chance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, some people, for whatever reason, they haven't had the opportunities that other people have had. And so, you guys are giving it to them. So that's great. How about you, Vince? Do you have any clients that you remember who basically came to you and said, oh, there's no way I'm ever going to do this? And you were able to get them into a house or help them find a mortgage with either Alan or somebody else's help?
I have had people who didn't think that they would qualify. And when, we talked to the lender that, you find out, well, your work credit history is better, so you actually do qualify. And because they never even investigated it, they discovered just how much, borrowing ability that they did have. But most people have, I would say, misconceptions based on misinformation that just seems to go around in families and offices and, acquaintances where people say, hey, you can't do this because of that. And, just like if you saw it on the internet, it must be true. It's like, don't trust the outside sources who, they don't do that for a living. Trust the people who do this for a living and can answer these questions every day.
I think that's right on. So now
can I add to that?
Sure, Alan, shoot.
I think the other thing that Vince is good at is that, a lot of times people, because they think, and we're talking about this, because they think there's no way they can do this, they may reach out to Vince and say, I can't do anything. Let's just find me a rental. That's where we step in and say, well, let's see. Maybe you can own. You are going to be paying a mortgage. Why pay somebody else's? Let's see if you can pay your own. So getting those people that say there's just no way, let us decide as the professionals, maybe renting is the right thing, but let's give you a chance to get that mortgage.
Yeah, the idea is to come up with a plan.
Exactly.
How are we going to get you? You may have to rent this year or next year, whatever. How are we going to get you to your ultimate goal where you want to go, which is home ownership? So let's get started on that. So what's the first process? What is the process and what do people have to look out for when they've had, financial difficulty? I mean, Alan, you mentioned 1, 2, 4 year time frame. Why don't you give me a little background and Vince, you could jump in. Tell me what the process is and what people need to look for and what to expect when they're looking for a mortgage and how to go about getting one.
Sure. So the first thing that I look at, as I mentioned before, is I'm getting the application, and the first thing I look at is the credit. The very first thing is the score, because that's a dead stop, and then the profile, and to see if they've got late payments. And when we get down to the bottom of the credit report, we get to the bankruptcy. That's when we analyze, okay, we've got a bankruptcy, it's got a discharge date, and then I go to my chart to see where do you qualify. So there's 4 different types of mortgages: conventional, FHA, VA, and USDA. And they all have different waiting periods, or what we call length of recovery. So for conventional, it's 4 years. For FHA, it's 2 years. For VA, it's 2 years. For USDA, it's 3 years. So that's when the plan really starts, is we identify, do you qualify for potentially all of those? It could be if you're a veteran. You've got to be a veteran. Your parents can't be to get a VA, but it could be that you could qualify for all 4 of those. Which one is best for you? As I said, conventional is a 4-year waiting period. Maybe it'd be better to go with FHA. That's only a 2-year waiting period. So that's where the plan really starts, and we start to devise that plan. And I work with Vince to come up with what's the best scenario. And that might be maybe they're only a month or 2 away from that 2-year period, and then And that's all. Again, that's all part of the plan, and that's how we started.
And so the first thing you can do when they come meet with you is you're going to pull their credit report, right? What are you looking for them from an employment history, so that they can show that they have stable employment, so that they can get approved? What are you looking for from them? Is there a certain number of months or years that they have to be at a certain job or something like that?
There's 2 distinct categories: the salary employees, which is you don't have to be. Generally speaking, in the mortgage business we use a lot of general, but generally speaking, if you're a salary employee in the same amount of work, there isn't a set time period. I've had people change jobs 3 times. Prime example is a police officer. 3 different counties wanted him so bad everybody kept outbidding the other person. During the loan process, he kept changing jobs. It was okay. That doesn't work for everybody. So salary, pretty easy. Then you've got the variable, you've got the hourly, the bonus, the commission, and all that, and that's a little bit different. Generally speaking, if you're hourly, you've got to be on that job for a year to be able to count your hourly pay. So, two different avenues. If it's salary, you go down one road. If it's hourly or what we call variable, we start to analyze that.
So when you're analyzing it, you sort of look at, have there been gaps in the pay, or you want to make sure that they've had steady income is there like a magic number of months, like 6 months or 12 months, or is it just all dependent?
Different mortgages have different guidelines, but generally the rule of thumb is you don't want to have a gap more than 6 months. But sometimes they can be explained. You had a job, you worked for 5 years, went back to school, and then you went back into the workforce. So there are some hard and fast rules in mortgages, but there's also these gray areas where we really look at it and see, does it make sense? This is the best way I can explain the mortgage process. It's a puzzle, and we just take all the pieces and put it together so that the underwriter can make sense of it all and make a decision. Now, there are some hard, fast stops. On a conventional mortgage for every lender in the country, if you don't have a 620, you can't move forward. But there's a lot of gray areas as well. It's a lot of extent.
Let's just go back to that. So 620, if you want a conventional mortgage, you got to have a score of at least 620.
Correct.
What about for FHA or the VA loans? Same, or is that a lower?
Different. So FHA, that's a great question. FHA actually doesn't have a minimum. So if you called FHA and said, hey, if you could get a hold of somebody there, what's your minimum? They said, we don't have a minimum. We let the lender decide. My company's minimum is 580. There are some that are higher, and to be honest, there are some that are lower. But it depends on the lender.
Okay.
So for government loans, FHA, VA, and USDA, my company is 580. Again, some will go lower, but I'd like to put a little asterisk by that. The lower you go, the more the mortgage companies are going to want out of you, which is going to be in the rate, and it to be a really clean deal.
So the lower your rate, the more you're going to pay, either in points or in interest or in closing fees or whatever it is. Okay.
Correct.
So what it sounds like is that there is a lot of gray area, right? It's not a black or white issue. There's a lot of nuance and things that goes in there. Now, is the first step to actually come talk to you? Or it sounds to me like what most people are excited about with buying a house is not applying for a mortgage, but going shopping for the home. Is that right? And that's where Vince comes in, because Vince is the guy who's going to help them find the home. So Vince, when somebody comes to you like that, what do you tell them? What do you tell them to expect? How do you manage their expectations, and what's the process when somebody comes to you looking for a home and they've had some financial difficulty?
Well, usually we don't find out right away about the financial difficulty. People aren't very open and upfront about that. We'll get a Zillow call.
That's true.
Or somebody will put in a request on one of our listings, and then we'll take them out, and then we start this process of investigating and opening the can of worms, so to speak, and then you find out, we've had a bankruptcy. It's like, okay, you can still buy a house, but what I have to do is very delicately tell people it doesn't pay for you to continue looking for houses, because we don't want you to get discouraged and disappointed and see a lot of places, because time is valuable. People, don't want to waste time showing them or seeing them if you have no chance. But the first thing I tell them is, we can still look at houses, but you have to get all your records together. Okay. And the second thing is I'm going to give you a list of 3 or 4 lenders. You need to contact 1 or 2 of them and start this process.
When you're doing that, you said get their documents together. What kind of documents should people expect to have to pull together for them to apply for a loan? Is it like pay stubs and tax returns and bank statements, or what are you normally expecting for them to pull together, and what type and what time frame?
2 areas of documents that you have to absolutely pay attention to. The first one is, all your financial records, your pay stubs, and, your bank statements, your credit card statements, and all that kind of thing, because somebody like Alan is going to probably request, scanned copies of those. But the most important thing is you need to get every last document together regarding your bankruptcy proceedings.
Okay. And I guess, assuming you mean that's the petition, which is the document that you filed that lists all the creditors and answers all the questions, right? And then you may want the initial notice, which is the document that the court sends out when the bankruptcy is filed, and that what tells the world that you filed bankruptcy. And then probably most importantly, you want a copy of the discharge order. That is the document that the court enters when the discharge is granted and basically your debt's going away. Are those the three biggies that you're talking about?
Those are the three
Vince?
biggies, and if you tell that to people, they usually hire somebody like you who handles all that. They absolutely don't know all these different things that you're talking about. So the easiest way is to tell them, whatever folder you have those in, get that scanned and copied and send it to me. Okay, so then I go through it and I see that they're missing 1 page or 2 pages, and I say, well, listen, can you contact your lawyer and get a copy of this? They have the records. You may not have saved this while you were going through this, a very stressful time, or you misplaced it. But
Right.
without all of those documents, Alan is going to have an impossible time talking to his people.
Right, right. Now, one thing I will tell you, at least for my office, we have everything in electronic format. So if a client calls us and says, hey, I need the discharge order, we can basically within 5 minutes find it in our database and email it to them. So not a problem. And even if the client authorizes us and says, can you please email this to Vince Tobacco? Here's his email address. We'll send it on to him as long as we have your authorization. So it is a public record. I mean, it's not something that anybody can hide. So, but we have that. So, and I think most lawyers nowadays, at least bankruptcy lawyers, are pretty paperless, at least because you have to file everything electronically in the bankruptcy court. So they should have an electronic copy. And I've been doing this, for 27 years. So I've got electronic copies back a long time. So normally, if the client has trouble, if you haven't saved that, contact your lawyer and they should be able to get it for you. So you need financial statements, but also bankruptcy statements, bankruptcy documents. Anything else, Vince, that that those people are gonna have to pull together?
I would recommend that they pull together all of the patience that they can muster. Okay, because you are going to see people who have various levels of patience when it comes to documentation, making requests, making transmissions. Not everybody has a scanner, okay? I've had some clients who they had to go to FedEx to get it done, and other times in order to get a copy of the paperwork that we've been trying to find for 2 weeks, I had to go physically meet them somewhere like a Panera or a Chipotle and, actually take the document, take it home, scan it, and then mail it back to them. So my biggest...
Well, that's because you're a full service guy. I mean, you're there to try to help them out and get them in. We find people in all different areas with all different sophistications, right? Some people are really sophisticated and can get you those documents in 5 minutes, and some people, and that's fine, but we're all in the business of helping people get there. So that's great. So now we've talked about, what about shopping for a home? Do you steer them in certain neighborhoods or certain price ranges or anything like that? Is there a price range, or is that all just dependent upon their income? How do you determine, and Alan, you can jump in after Vince answers this, how do you determine how much house somebody can actually afford?
I'm glad you actually used that very, very illegal term called steering. Steering is against the law, the Fair Housing Act, right? And if you're testing me, I hope I passed. So,
I wasn't testing you, dude. I'm just, trying to figure things out.
Absolutely, as a realtor, not allowed to steer anybody towards a neighborhood or away from a neighborhood. You cannot steer people towards higher or lower priced homes.
Right.
Okay. Basically, my job is to simply facilitate the buyer's ability to get the type of home that they need or want. Now that being said, if someone says, okay, listen, I want this $450,000 house, and we've talked with Alan, and we pretty much kind of have a general idea that, really all they can afford is a $350,000 house, all right? then what I'm going to do is advise them that it might be better to wait until Alan comes up with his pre-approval to give them the real idea. It's like, oh, well, guess what? Your maximum borrowing ability is 375. So please don't make me the guy who makes you discouraged by showing you a 450 house that you can't get.
Right.
Because now you're going to look at that and you're going to go, oh, but that's what I want, but I can't afford that. And you're not going to feel good about the 375 houses because it's like comparing champagne to beer. Right? So, yes.
Right. Well, there's some really good beers, and I suppose there's some really bad champagnes, but that's besides the point. So I guess what I'm hearing from you is that before shopping, it's really important to get the documents together and get that to somebody like Alan so that they can tell you financially where your limit is, where your cap is as far as what you think your borrowing ability is. So then you can shop intelligently and say, okay, we may be able to, if my cap is 350, I probably can look at a house that's listed at 375, thinking, based upon the market, if I can give it, if there's some wiggle room there. But the idea is, and Alan, how long does it take you, like once you get the documents that Vince has talked about, to sort of give people an idea of here's what I think your range of borrowing ability is?
Well, without documents and getting a full application, I can get an answer to the borrower, in about 15 minutes because I'm pulling credit, assuming that I'm at my desk and at my computer and I start the clock, 15 minutes to review the credit, look at the guidelines, look at the debt to income ratio, and then I let people know that this is your range. Now I need to get the documents to back all this up. You'd be surprised. Some people list they might make, say, $100,000, and then I get their pay stubs and this and that, and it's 80, so it's all got to be, verified.
Right.
And in that process, there really are two hard stops. The credit score is set per program, and then the other piece of that puzzle is the debt to income ratio. And every borrower has two, a front and a back. And the front ratio is the proposed mortgage payment divided into the gross income. The back ratio is the proposed mortgage payment, all of their debt that shows up on a credit report, divided into the income. So you're going to have two. Almost everybody's is not the same. Your front might be 30, your back might be 50. And that's the point where I tell Vince, okay, based on these estimates, this is their range. But it's very important to note here that there's a lot of things that can skew those numbers. A lot of people don't realize this, but insurance on a property that's more than 5 miles away from a fire hydrant or a fire station could be double or triple one that's a mile away.
Wow.
So it's very important, very important to work with a lender that understands these things, that has the experience, that's learned from mistakes in the first 5 years of this business, 25 years ago, something little like that.
Yeah.
In addition, let's say that somebody's qualified for, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac loans, conventional loans. You can go to 50%, not a 0.01 higher. Let's say that the insurance was underestimated. Let's say that since rates go up and down daily, 1/8 in a rate up could take you out of the ballpark. So this is where an agent and a lender works together in tandem with the borrowers to make sure you're not overspending.
So what I'm hearing is that the two numbers, one is you got to make sure that the payment that you're going to have doesn't eat up too large a percentage of your disposable income, what you bring home every month, right?
Right.
And did I hear you? What's that number? I may have missed it.
Well, on a conventional loan, it's 50%. Each type of loan has a different threshold.
So your mortgage payment can't be more than 50% of your monthly take-home pay? Is that what you're saying?
No, we actually go off of gross income, not take-home. And your mortgage payment and any debt that would show up on a credit report, car payments, other houses you may own with mortgage payments, credit card payments, all that. The mortgage payment, the proposed mortgage payment, and all of that divided into your gross on a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, conventional loan can exceed 50%. Okay. On VA loans, you can go up as high as 58, 59, 60.
Wow. So the debt to income ratio is higher for those other loans, VA and FHA.
And USDA is the most limiting. It's generally a first-time homebuyer program in rural areas. No money down, and you're capped around the 29-41 range. Depending on credit score, you can push that a little bit, but that's going to be the lower end.
Now, it sounds to me like in that situation where you're looking at somebody's debt to income ratio, that somebody's filed bankruptcy and basically gotten rid of a huge chunk of unsecured debts, or maybe surrendered a vehicle and got rid of that secured debt, may be in a better position basically because their debt to income ratio is going to be a better ratio because all of that stuff that they had before filing is going to be gone and wiped away through the bankruptcy. Is that what you guys see, Vince, Alan? Is that what you guys see?
Yes, I see it, and we like to see that. We don't like to see the people that go through it and then rack everything back up again. And I don't see that as often as I see people that learn, got in a pickle, and for all kinds. You know this as a bankruptcy attorney. Everybody's got a different reason of how they get into that pickle. It could be sad, a death of somebody, or just whatever, loss of a job, things that are out of their control.
Yep.
But certainly
get sick, right? And you lose some time from work and stuff like that. No.
Yeah.
I mean, the top three reasons are people get sick, people get divorced, right, or people get fired. And nobody chooses those things. That's not like somebody says, "Oh, goody, I'm going to go get sick today," right? It's the stuff that happens. So
one other quick thing to add about the credit score. One of the things that I mentioned there's hard stops. So one of the things that all lenders should do this, and I do it, is that if somebody's not obviously we're talking about helping people that don't think they can be helped. Right. The other thing is your credit score is your credit score, but it doesn't mean that somebody can't help you get it up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something else that we do on the lending side is if you're at, say, a 592 and you need to be at 620 for a conventional loan, I help and guide people to do the things they need to do to get it up. It may take a month. It may take 3 months. It may take a year, but that's our job to help them. I mean, it's not something they should just do on their own because time does help things, but, they need a plan. That's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
So we deliver that plan that you need to do this, this, and this. And it might be, I'll just give you two quick examples. It might be go out and get a credit card, start to reestablish credit. That's generally going to take 3 to 6 months before you get a score. And for one borrower that I had, it actually meant stop paying your credit card every day and actually let that balance ride a little bit so the bureaus can see that you actually are managing the credit, and his score actually went up.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, what I recommend my clients to do is to go look for a secured credit card, one where you give them $500, you get $1,000 worth of credit. You use that to buy like gas or whatever, and then you pay it off every month. So you show that steady payment. But the key is that you got to make sure that secured credit card actually reports to the credit reporting agencies. So you need to look into it and make sure they report. Because if you get one of those that doesn't report, then you're not getting any of that benefit.
What a lot of people don't realize is that the bureaus don't look at your credit card company doesn't look at your balance every single day and report it. So if you spend, pay over, say, 10 days, that's not going to be known.
Right.
If you just do that the whole month, then it looks like you never used it and you're not managing the credit, so your score is not going to go up.
Right.
So the two examples are sometimes the prescription is don't pay it off so quick. I had a borrower every day. He spent whatever he spent. At the end of the day, he paid off every single day. So it looked to the bureaus when it was reported like he never used it.
Right. It looked like a zero balance.
And again, this is all about education. People don't know these things, and heck, why would they know them? They need people like us, like me and Vince and you, to explain these things to them because some of it doesn't make sense.
So Vince, you want to talk about another thing that you've seen where people go to the opposite extreme. Tell me a little bit about that.
Right. That's what I call people who are credit traumatized, where they recover from their bankruptcy and they never use credit again because they're very afraid. So they pay cash for everything, and they don't have any credit history built up, no credit card, no furniture loan. They go out and they pay rent on like a month to month from some relative, so they're not actually signing a lease and developing a credit history through a reporting agency with a landlord or anything. So all of a sudden they get tired of paying rent and they want to, spend that $1,400 a month and buy a house, yet they have no credit history at all. So we have to tell them, okay, you need to start out by getting a credit card and start a furniture loan or something just to start paying monthly, but to carry a little bit of balance every month and not pay it off, because the credit card companies or the reporting agencies like to see that you're carrying debt, but you're paying regularly.
Okay. Okay, so that's a great example, because I have clients like that says I'm never going to use credit again, and if their goal is at some point to have credit to be able to buy a house or a car, one of the two major big purchases that people make in their life, it's important that they think about that and use credit wisely going forward. Not go crazy, not make bad decisions, but use it wisely so that when they do need it, they have that credit score that will allow them to do what it is that they want to do. Let's talk
expand on that real quick?
Sure, yeah, Alan, go ahead.
Yeah, so, I like to, I've learned over the years, instead of just telling people what the guidelines are, I like to tell them and then explain and give reasons why. So in that regard, I have a ton of people who say to me, they'll do what Vince just mentioned, and they think that's a good thing. And why would you not want to lend to me? I don't have any debt. I'm a good risk. And I explain to them, you're actually not, and here's why. People who have credit and had shown an ability to manage the credit are a better risk than people who don't have any credit, because then you might get credit and go crazy. Mm-hmm. So we like people. Again, I like to tell people what the rule is and the reasoning behind it. If you have a credit card with a limit of $10,000, you never let it get over $1,000 for 10 years. We like that. That means that you're not going to go crazy with it, because let's face it, when you buy a house, you're going to be flooded with everything. Home Depot, Lowe's, hey, take our credit cards free. Oh, buy this. It's not even the same as. And then we want people that just don't go crazy. So actually not having credit is a bad thing, and that's the reason why. When you have it, you show the ability to manage it, is how we look at it.
Great. From a bankruptcy standpoint, do you guys see any difference between a Chapter 7 and a Chapter 13? People who are coming out of either one, is it about the same? Is the waiting period the same? Or are there any differences from what you guys have seen in your time in this business?
Well, okay. So I have to go to my cheat sheet here, because at my age I can only keep so much in my brain. But so for conventional, before we mentioned 4 years, for a Chapter 13, the waiting period or length of recovery is 2 years. For FHA, it's also 2 years. For VA, it was 2 years. For 7, for 13, maybe considered with just 1 year, and the same for USDA, with the caveat that the trustee has to approve it.
So you're talking about somebody that's been in a Chapter 13. If you're in a Chapter 13 for 2 years, even while you're in a Chapter 13, you can apply and get a mortgage loan.
Well, no, it has to be discharged. So for conventional, 2 years from the discharge date with reestablished credit.
Okay. So if it's a 3-year plan, they basically are in the Chapter 13 paying a 3 years of payments, and then they have to wait 2 years after that, right?
Correct.
But if they did a Chapter 7, they'd have to wait 4 years for a conventional loan. So it basically cuts that time in half if you've completed a Chapter 13. And I'm guessing because the creditor and the people making loans think, well, they've successfully completed their Chapter 13 and they basically have done this, made payments for 3 to 5 years, then we don't have to have them wait as long. Oh, that's great to know. That's great to know. Any other differences, Vince, that you've seen in your time?
I always defer to the lenders on this, because these types of rules change. All right. As a realtor, we don't follow those rules. We're not working with them every day. We rely on people like Alan to stay current with them. So it would be bad advice for me to tell somebody what I knew if that advice was like 2 years old, because it might have changed since then.
Right. Okay. Great.
And another reason for that is there are things that will, for lack of a better word, trump the bankruptcy rule. So let's say we've talked a lot about conventional and the waiting period being 4 years. A foreclosure for a conventional loan, waiting period is 7 years. So that's why I think Vince, defers to the lender, because you've got to look at the whole picture. If you've got a foreclosure in the picture, then that guideline is going to trump the bankruptcy guideline.
Right. So
there's nothing.
My bankruptcy intent has just went up, because so when people say, is there a difference between foreclosure and bankruptcy? What you're saying is it's better to file bankruptcy before the foreclosure, because then you only have, if it's a 7, a 4-year waiting period. If it's a 13, a 2-year waiting period afterwards, where if you go to foreclosure and you file bankruptcy afterwards, you're stuck with a 7-year waiting period. Is that what you're telling me? That's huge. I mean, that's huge for people that, frankly, I didn't know that. So that's a great thing to learn about. I've always tried to get people to file before the foreclosure, but sometimes they can't. But now, there's a real reason why if they want to get back into a house, they can do it a lot quicker.
Correct.
Guys, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me and explain this a really complicated and important issue about how people who file bankruptcy can actually get a home. And my takeaway is that it's doable, right? There's certain requirements that you have to meet. There's certain paperwork that you're going to have to pull together. But it's possible for everybody after bankruptcy with some help from an expert to get a mortgage. That's my takeaway from this. It's not impossible. It's doable. And you just have to have somebody that can help you through the process. So, guys, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. And on one parting shot, if you guys had one bit of advice to hand out to somebody who has gone through bankruptcy and wants to buy a house or is in a bankruptcy and wants to buy a house at some point, what would you tell them? What's that one top piece of advice? Each of you, Alan, you go first, and then we'll finish up with Vince.
Hands down, talk to a lender and formally apply so you can set the plan in motion. Because if you don't do that and you wait, say, 6 months, you're 6 months behind. You wait a year, you're a year behind. The quicker you talk to a professional, a lender, the quicker you have a plan in place because they don't know the guidelines.
Now, regarding that, so if somebody's filed bankruptcy and they've come out and they filed the Chapter 7, should they wait 4 years before they contact you, or should they contact you or somebody like you 3 years and 6 months? What would you tell them? When's the time to pick up the phone and say, hey, Alan, I'm ready to move forward?
Immediately. The sooner the better. And that's the sooner the better so I can set a plan. All of these plans require reestablished credit and meet those credit score requirements. So the sooner they know what they need to do, the better off they're going to be. If they wait 1 year or 2 years, then they're 1 or 2 years behind. And here's the other thing. They might be done with the bankruptcy, so they might take those 3 steps forward, but they might take 3 steps back and not even know that they did it.
Right.
So they have to know what the plan is so they execute it correctly.
So if somebody gets a discharge, you don't mind if they would call you a month afterward and say, hey, can I make an appointment to come in and talk to you about I want to get a mortgage? You're cool with it.
When I hear that, I say hallelujah because it's so much harder when it's 2 years later. I'm like, I wish we had talked 2 years ago.
Right.
Because,
Great.
So
all right.
absolutely.
Well, that's it. How about you, Vince? What's your number one takeaway for my listeners?
My best advice to anybody is after you've gone through this, whatever the reason is that this got away from you, is that you need to recover with a specific attitude and a plan to be mindful of your credit score and your credit maintenance all the time after this. If you ever plan on, recovering, put it on your Google Calendar, put your car payment or your rent payment or all these different things. We have this neat little tool here that has a calendar on it, and you carry the calendar every minute of every day. Some of them have them on their nightstand. Okay, so once you start being more mindful of maintaining your credit score, you'll be more mindful to ask the questions of people like me and people like Alan, and Alan will say, I'm glad you reached out, 6 months after your bankruptcy instead of waiting 4 years, because during that time we could have put a plan together to rebuild, recover, repaint your credit score. Okay, and with that kind of mindfulness, you develop these habits so that you'll never probably end up in that same boat again. And that's what we hope.
Well, that's great. Now, if anybody watching this or listening to this wants to get in touch with you, can you just tell us the best way for them to get in touch with you? And that can be through email or website or whatever. And Alan, why don't I start with you? How can somebody get in touch with you if they want to talk to you about this issue?
Best way would be my mobile number, 703-609-9854, either a call or a text.
Great. And how about you, Vince? How would you like people who hey, I want to buy a house in the Virginia area, Central Virginia, Northern Virginia area?
Exactly the same way. The mobile number, because you can call me or text 540-212-3912. And I work anywhere from Charlottesville and Lake Monticello all the way up to Loudoun County, Purcellville, Arlington. I do all of Central to Northern Virginia.
Great. And Alan, do you have any geographical limitations for where you do your work?
No, as a mortgage lender, I'm licensed in Virginia, so the entire state.
Great.
And if for some reason I can't help somebody in the state of Virginia, my company's national. I could refer to any number of loan officers in all the states, including Hawaii.
Oh, nice. Yes. I like Hawaii, but
Me too.
I don't ever plan on living there because the cost of living is outrageous, but that's neither here nor there. So, guys, again, thanks for joining me. Again, this is Bankruptcy University with Marshall Slayton, brought to you by Slayton Law, PLC. I really appreciate you taking the time. I hope you learned something. I know I did. So, again, thanks for joining us. And, gentlemen, thanks for joining me today. And y'all have a great day.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you.